The whole house hollered at the same time. One big shout, the kind that rattles the glasses on the table and makes the man upstairs stomp his foot to celebrate right along with everybody. The United States had scored, and while the living room jumped up and down in front of the television, there was a woman with her back to all of them, in the kitchen, spooning gravy over a plate of smothered chicken that nobody in that room knew what it had cost her to make. Earline heard the shout from far off, the way you hear a party at somebody else's house. She didn't even turn around. She kept fixing plates, one after another, greens on this side, cornbread on that side, careful, slow, so nothing ran together. The heat from the stove came up on her face, and she wiped her forehead with the back of her hand, same way she'd been doing it for 30 years. Out there, it was the World Cup. In here, it was work. And not one of them, not a single one eating her plates in front of that game, stopped to ask who had cooked it. There was something Earline started doing in that kitchen during the World Cup. A small thing that nobody saw. Not her husband, not her grown kids, not the folks who came over to watch the games. Something that started almost by accident at half-time of some game or other, and changed her life more than any goal changed that whole tournament. But to understand it, we have to go back a little. We have to know who this woman was before she found what she found. Earline was 58 years old and lived in Dallas, in Oak Cliff, on one of those streets where the porches still talk to each other and there's a church on every other corner. Her house was small, 2 bedrooms, with a stove she knew better than she knew her own handwriting, because Earline cooked. She fixed plates, real plates, smothered chicken, oxtails, greens, mac and cheese, peach cobbler, and she sold them to the neighbors, for the repasts, after funerals, for the church functions, for the game day crowds. Work of the hands. Work you don't learn in any school, and that not many people respect. She got up at 5 in the morning to season the meat while it was still dark out. Her hands carried a smell of onion and garlic that no soap could take off. In the afternoon she'd be cooking, in the evening she'd be selling, and in between all of it, she made the food for the house, washed her husband's clothes, swept the porch, and still found time to make it to Wednesday night service. Earline's life was a clock she wound herself every single day without anybody ever asking her if she was tired. Anybody looking at her kitchen from the outside would have called it little. But to Earline, that room was the size of the world. In there she ran things, everything in its place, the flour on the left, the seasonings on the right, the dish towel folded 3 times over the oven handle, the way only she knew how to fold it. Some people prayed in church. Earline prayed while she stirred a pot. In a motion of her hand, she'd done so long she didn't even think about it anymore. She did the household figuring in there too, in her head while the meat rested. Always somebody else's figuring, never her own. Because her own, truth be told, she didn't have any to do, and she had a sad way of talking about her own work. When somebody asked her what she did, Earline said she helped out around the house with a little cooking. A little cooking, like 30 years of grease, heat, and getting up before the sun was some hobby for a woman with nothing else to do. She didn't put any value on what she did, because nobody ever had. You learn to see yourself through other folks' eyes, and other folks' eyes always went right past Earline. If this story is already touching something in you, stay here with me. This channel was made for women like Earline, like you, who might be listening to this while you do 5 other things, because a woman almost never gets the luxury of just sitting down to watch. What weighed on Earline's life wasn't a lack of work. Work she had plenty of. What weighed was that the money from her work was never hers. It went into the house and it disappeared. The light bill, the gas, the tab at the corner store, her husband's blood pressure pills, the school supplies for the grandbabies. Earline earned, but Earline never had. It was like pouring water into a bucket with a hole in it and hoping it would fill. And then the real trouble came. One Tuesday, the old refrigerator quit. That refrigerator was the heart of her little business, where she kept the meat, The sides, the cobblers she'd already made. No refrigerator, no plates, no selling. The repair, the man said, would run about $400, and that was if he could even find the part. Earline went to the jar where she kept her set-aside money. The little she'd been gathering coin by coin for emergencies. It was empty. Her husband had taken it to cover a car note she didn't even know they had. She didn't make a scene. That's the part that hurts. Earline didn't holler, didn't cry in front of him, didn't throw a thing. She just stood there, her hand on the edge of the sink, looking at that empty jar, and inside her, an old line came up, the kind her mama used to say, "A woman's money is for the house, not for keeping back for yourself." For more than 50 years, Earline had believed it, and maybe that was exactly why, in 58 years of living, she'd never once had money that was hers. That belief hadn't come cheap. It had cost her a whole life. She paid for the refrigerator on a payment plan, with interest, at a place downtown. And the World Cup started up that very week. With the house full, everybody wanting plates, everybody hollering at the goals, and Earline frying in the kitchen, thinking that month was going to be one more month of a bucket with a hole in it. It was on a game day afternoon that she got to talking with Miss Odessa. Miss Odessa was an old woman, up in her 70s, who set up a folding table outside the barbershop and sold pound cake and sweet tea to the men who gathered there to watch the game. Earline had walked over to drop off an order to the barber and stopped a minute to rest her feet near the old woman's table. The two of them stood there, listening to the game from a ways off, the announcer carrying on from the television inside the shop. Miss Odessa was counting the change in an old coffee can, taking her time, setting the dollars apart from the quarters. And without looking at Earline, the way you talk about the weather, she said it. "Everybody in there's pulling for a team, baby. Now who's pulling for you?" Earline laughed, a little embarrassed, figured it was just old lady talk. She picked up her bag and went on. But the line went with her. She crossed the street with it hanging on her, no weight to it yet, just something that stayed. "Who's pulling for you?" She said it again inside herself, rolled her shoulder like she was shrugging off a fly, and headed home to fix more plates for the second half. On the way, she passed the church where she went on Wednesdays. The door was propped open, one candle burning down at the front. Earline stopped a second, not going in. She stood there on the sidewalk, bag in her hand, watching that little flame shake. She had asked that church for so much. Health for her children, peace in her house, enough to get to the end of the month. Never once, in all the praying of her life, had she asked for a thing that was just for her. She didn't even know she was allowed to. It struck her as strange, and she went on walking, but that flame stayed lit behind her eyes the whole way home. At the house, the living room was full again. Her husband fussing at the referee, the cousins laughing, the grandbabies running. Earline came in through the kitchen, turned on the stove, and stood there. Miss Odessa's line wouldn't leave. She picked up the mason jar she kept her buttons in, the one she'd bought herself at the dollar store years back, and she held it in her hands longer than she needed to. She looked at the jar. She looked at the full living room, and she couldn't have told you what she felt, only that there was a tightness in her chest that wasn't tiredness. When the halftime whistle blew on the television, the whole living room got up at the same time to go to the bathroom, get another drink, stretch their legs. And Earline, who'd just taken $20 from a neighbor for a plate, stood there with that money in her hand, in the middle of the kitchen, not really knowing why. She looked at the empty house jar, and instead of putting it there, she dumped the buttons out of the mason jar, slid the bills inside, and twisted the lid back on. She pushed it to the back of the shelf, behind the flour. She didn't rightly understand what she'd just done. She only felt that for the first time in a long time, something that came in through her hands hadn't gone right back out. The next game, she did it again. At halftime, she set aside what she'd sold and slid it into the jar. It wasn't much. Some bills, a few coins, a crumpled $5 now and then. But it was at halftime, always at halftime, when the whole house stopped to breathe, and nobody was looking at her. It turned into a rhythm. The whistle would blow, and while the others went for another drink, Earline went to the jar. Inside herself, she started calling it, half laughing at her own self, the half-time plate. Because that's what it was. After a lifetime of fixing everybody else's plate, she was finally fixing one for herself. And you have to understand something here, because it's easy to miss. Earline wasn't saving what was left over. A woman who saves what's left over never saves a thing, because there's never anything left. She was saving first. Before the money turned into a bill, a tab, a bottle of pills, she took her part out and hid it. A part of everything she earned became hers, before it belonged to anybody else. She didn't learn that at some seminar. She learned it with a mason jar and a referee's whistle. At first she was scared she'd forget. Then she noticed her body had learned it on its own. All it took was the announcer calling the end of the first half, that sharp whistle coming out of the television, and her hand was already at her apron, already counting the money in her pocket. It was like the game had turned into a bell that rang just for her. The others heard the whistle and thought about a cold drink. Earline heard the whistle and thought about what was hers. The same sound, two different worlds inside the same house. There was one night she almost gave it up. Money came up short for groceries. Her husband complained the dinner was thin, and the pull to open that jar and take it back was strong. Earline even took the jar down. She sat with it in her lap, in the plastic kitchen chair, the old fan rattling overhead. She unscrewed the lid, she looked at the money, and she screwed it back on. She didn't take a dime. She made away some other how, sold one more pan of cobbler that Saturday, and the groceries got covered. The jar stayed shut. It was the first time in her life Earline walked into that corner store and didn't rehearse an excuse to put it on the tab. She paid cash for what she could, out of what was the house's, and what was hers stayed hers. There's something no woman ought to find out so late. It wasn't the money that changed Earline. It was that she stopped believing that keeping a little back for herself was stealing from her own family. The World Cup ended. The games spread out and stopped, but the halftime plate didn't. Earline had the hang of it now. She started setting her part aside every day. At the same hour halftime used to fall, even with no game on the television at all. When that mason jar filled up, she counted it all out on the table 3 times because she couldn't believe it. Then she carried it to an account she opened herself, alone, without telling a soul, at a bank near the bus line. Months after that first game, Earline had $4,000. Her money. Hers alone. For the first time in 58 years. She bought a new refrigerator, paid in full for her business. She didn't ask her husband. She didn't ask anybody. She walked into the store, picked it out, paid, and gave the address for delivery with a calm that surprised her own self. The salesman, used to seeing women her age come in asking to finance it over a year, asked her twice if she meant paid in full. She did. Earline counted the bills out on the counter, one by one, taking her time, the same way Miss Odessa counted her change in that coffee can. And when she finished counting, she noticed her back was straight. It had been years since she paid attention to her own posture. She'd spent her life bent over the stove, over the sink, over everybody else's troubles. At that counter, for the first time, she was standing up straight. When the refrigerator came, her husband asked where the money came from. Earline just said she'd made a way. And for the first time, making a way didn't mean asking, didn't mean swallowing her pride, didn't mean waiting her turn behind everybody else. It meant she had it because she had kept it. It was on one of those afternoons, the World Cup long over, that Earline understood what all of it had been for. She was on the porch next door to a young woman who'd just moved in, a girl in her 30s named Tiara, who was always saying she did nails all day and never saw the color of her own money, that it all went to the house, to her man, to the kids. The girl said it with tired eyes, the very same way Earline had looked at her own life for years, without ever seeing herself. Earline knew that look right off. It was her own, from before. So she did a thing. She took out of her pocket a $1 bill, old and soft, that she'd found under the stove that first day of the half-time plate, and had kept out of pure stubbornness. She put it in the young woman's hand, and she said, "Quiet, not preaching. Start with this one. Set aside a part of what comes in before you pay one single thing. Not what's left over, baby. What's left over never comes. Start with what's yours." The girl looked at the dollar in the palm of her hand, not quite understanding, the same way Earline hadn't understood that first afternoon. And Earline smiled, because she knew that one day she would. The mason jar was inside on the shelf, and it wasn't the only thing that was hers anymore. Now it was just the first. "Who's pulling for you?" Miss Odessa had asked. It took Earline half a World Cup to answer. But she answered. "Me," she thought. "Now it's me. Before we go, I want to ask you one thing, woman to woman. Comment down below, write it just like this, day 1, and tell me one small thing you're going to do today just for you. It can be setting aside $1. It can be saying no to one favor. I want to read every comment one by one, with the same care Earline gave to fixing a plate. And if this story touched you, send it to that friend, that sister, that auntie who spends her life in the kitchen while the whole house celebrates in the front room. She needs to hear this today. If you want to stay with us, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. Every week there's a new story of a real woman waiting for you, the kind nobody tells, but that happen on every street, in every neighborhood, in every kitchen in this country. And if you want to take your first step today, without waiting for any World Cup to start, there's a free app made to help you put some order to your money, the same way Earline put hers in that jar. The link is right here in the comments. Just tap it. It won't do magic. It'll do what the mason jar did. It'll help you see where yours is going and keep the part that's yours. Take care of you, baby, because while the whole world is pulling for its team, somebody's got to start pulling for you. And that somebody, today, is going to be you. See you in the next story.